Hey guys, what's up? So I decided I want to actually break down some fights that I've had recently. Most of these are actually invasions. This first clip is an exception, but there were a lot of really cool things that happened that I wanted to talk about. So note first that my opponent here is trying to pressure me here with this glaive, and I actually swapped over to the great sword because trying to use a straight sword against a glaive for me, at least without a shield, is really tough to do. And I want to take control of this fight, and because I have poise here, I can usually win. That was really smart for my opponent to use that weapon art, but you notice he tried to go for a mix-up and catch a panic roll, and since I have the greatsword, I was able to punish that. I was able to anticipate that mix-up. My opponent should have learned from that and known to just kind of keep swinging. It kind of drew, in my view, the wrong lesson, although the matchup here with a spear might be better. And I know they're just going to try to space me out. And they do have enough respect for the poise on the claymore, and that's certainly one of the first things I'm looking to see is, do they respect my poise? And if so, I can use that to kind of just get in their face and bully them a bit. My opponent here, obviously not super skilled because he's panic rolling a lot, even with greatsword in his face, and I'm just trying to bait trades with this thing. And of course, that's the real skill with Claymore, is to get good reads on your opponent, learn their patterns, and then use that information against them to trade. You can see here, he's kind of going through his inventory. I really should have been chucking bombs at him or doing something to try to keep pressure on him. Obviously, with the Cathedral Knights down there, I do not want to try to fight him and two Cathedral Knights at the same time, so there's no way in hell I'm going to go down there. Now I see he's got the parry tool out, so I'm going to be on my guard a bit. But I think you just have to kind of trust your instincts and mix things up. And as long as you do that, you're generally going to be fine. So I try not to think too much about it. I do go for a kick purposely, hoping maybe I can catch him with his guard up. He's not going to try to block, though. He's just going to go for parries. And right there, I saw that he was rolling into me, so I used that kind of quick little movement to bait a forward roll, which I was able to do successfully. And that's something I actually use quite a bit these days, and I'm able to get those nice forward roll punishes, which we'll actually see in more detail in some of these upcoming clips. There again, he went for the pause to go for the mix-up, and I read it, and I was able to punish him. Going for that mix-up rather than what he should have been doing, which is what I showed him earlier. He should have just been spamming, knowing I will attack out of hit stun in at least some circumstances. I rolled there just because I was worried about the BS. And again, attacking out of stun. A bit riskier this time with the parry tool out. And this time I know he's going to go for the hail parry, and I decide to just go for the unlock 2 R1s. Okay, so for the rest of this video, I was actually in Ante Karage's stream. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Ante, but I was in his stream. It was a lot of fun. Definitely recommend checking him out. I'll leave a link to his Twitch channel in the description. But we were talking about Ultra Great Swords, and I realized, well, not realized, I mean, I've known all along, but I had to kind of admit that my experience with the Ultras is really minimal. Like, I have not mained an Ultra since I was like a day one noob using the Astoria Greatsword, and it's a kind of a shortcoming in my game. You know, you play with weapons, even if you don't like them, it teaches you something about countering other people that are using them. And really, like, I've just always been a bad Ultra player, and I started to feel kind of guilty about it. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna go spend like an evening invading with an Ultra. I end up using the Astora just because the weight is so low. I was able to fit it into my existing build without having to really make any changes or compromises. And this is actually the build that I was using. This guy right here, he's I think soul level 72 plus 7, something in that vicinity. And I thought mid-level invasions would be a great place to start. But what I quickly realized is that when you run into a very passive party like the one you see right here, using an Ultra is just a lesson in frustration. It was awful. I cut the first 3 minutes or so of this because it was just them standing around and reaction rolling my Ultra R1s. And if I've learned anything in this game, when I run into really passive players like this that are never going to really initiate, they're just going to wait till you attack one player and then the other one's going to come and flank you. I just switch to something fast like a curved sword, and then I just kind of unlock, and you can see I turn my camera, attack player A. Player B is guaranteed to come up on your flank while you do that, so just unlock the camera. You know, R1 away from the camera, and then attack the other player as they come up on your flank. That is really the most effective strategy I've found for dealing with players like this. You can go for parries sometimes if they're really predictable, but that wasn't really necessary in this case. Obviously, that Phantom had like no vigor at all. So to kind of bring this back home, the rest of the clips you're going to see are actually me with an Ultra, which I don't think I've ever had in one of my videos before. I don't promise that you'll see good Ultra play, but I did learn some interesting things from playing with an Ultra. Probably the most important of which was knowing when to get rid of the Ultra and switch to something else. You'll see a couple cases where I do that briefly, usually to finish somebody off. Here, if I hadn't used, or if I had used the Ultra rather, I would have just invited this guy to play even more passively than he is and then try to resummon his buddy. And with a curved sword, I can generally put them under enough pressure that they're not really going to be able to do that. Been trying to get away from the off stock. I haven't been using that very much lately, in part because it keeps my offhand free for hard swapping, something I'm trying to do more of. I still kind of suck at it, but I suck less than I did. And I'm not really playing enough like every day to really refine the muscle memory and get those hard swaps down the way that I want them to. But they're coming along, and it's, again, if you've got something in your offhand, can't tell you how many times I've like hard swapped and had a good hard swap, but then forgot I had like a cestus or an off stock in my offhand, so I try to just kind of keep those empty. As you can see here, one of the things I actually really like about playing with an Ultra is I like fishing with Ultras. Fishing with Ultras is a ton of fun, especially if you're up against just like one player. Like an Ultra is kind of perfect. And an Ultra also has another benefit, which is that your standard R1s can't be parried. These guys have not got that particular memo, and it resulted in a hilarious invasion. And I actually cut probably the first 4 or 5 minutes out of this invasion. It's literally been, like, I spawned into their world. Both these guys had offhand cestus, main hand dagger. So I knew exactly what these guys were going to be trying to do. They're going to try to parry everything I had. That didn't work out very well for these guys. And I'm actually really surprised that in this day and age that, 5 years into this game, somebody would be trying to parry like this and not understand the fundamental idea that you can't parry two-handed Ultras. So Ultras seem to do really well when you're up against multiple players that are trying to be very aggressive and try to run you down. Now, I didn't run into very much of that. A situation like this is really like the last place you want an Ultra for, where you've got one player by himself. He just had a Phantom. You know he probably wants to resummon. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna try to get the experience with the Ultra, but if this guy tries to resummon, then I'm probably gonna just go ahead and swap to something faster and finish him off before his Phantom can arrive. Funny thing is here, this is exactly what happens. I end up swapping over to the straight sword, actually right before he summoned, and now that I have a weapon in my hand that can actually be parried, he stops parrying for whatever reason. I really didn't understand what was going on. And then obviously off stock comes off just for the finisher, just so that I don't have to deal with this guy's Phantom. And this is actually really funny here at the end. His Phantom gets summoned in. The host is dead. So I guess to save himself like an extra 0.4 seconds, he black crystals out, which I'm not really sure I understand. So I'm not sure about like on PS5, but on PC lately, it's felt like there's been a lot more noobs than usual. Like, normally you invade mid-level these days, you're just going to get people that are making new builds, experienced players, but I've had the distinct impression that a lot of these players are very new to the game. I mean, you can see most of the guys that I'm fighting here, they're not experienced players, they're definite PvEers, which does diminish the fun somewhat, but is actually really great for me since I'm trying to learn how to use a new weapon. And you can see the blender is still very real. I mean, those guys just nuked half my health. So you still have the potential to be killed by PvEers, but it's definitely a lot harder than it would be at a, like, say, meta. So one thing I learned too from these invasions and like my couple sessions of invading with an Ultra, bad panic roll right there. But one of the things I learned is I don't use rolling attacks nearly often enough, especially with this weapon, the rolling attack. It's not the best Ultra rolling attack, but still pretty decent. And actually at launch, it couldn't even be parried, and it did thrust damage. I think both those things have been patched since then. But rolling attack I should have been using, and I for sure should have been using the charge more often. The charge on this weapon is really strong. Now, obviously, you're not going to want to charge out of neutral, especially against a parry tool, but there's still a place for a charge, and mea culpa for not using it at all. So that's definitely a change that I would make. I also didn't really use it one-handed very often. There were a couple circumstances where I use off stock and the main hand ultra, but here I get frustrated. Like, I'm just not in the mood to chase somebody around with an ultra, and I just put him in roll catch hell, and I'm able to finish the fight. So my patience for using an ultra was sort of tested, and really, to be honest, that's the reason I've stayed away from ultras for so long. I don't have the patience for them. I think probably I'll change and I'll start swapping over to the ultras from time to time. I should use them more often, but I don't see me ever maining one, and I certainly don't see myself building a character around it. I was invading here a lot, and I had so many people just rush the boss fog, and that's why I attacked that guy as he was fighting the PvE, because I thought he was going to rush the boss. But when I realized he wasn't, he was going to fight, I decided, okay, I'm just going to let him heal up. And then when I saw him use bundles on his weapon, I got pretty pumped, because I realized that means this guy's got some amount of PvP experience. And as I mentioned, I really love fishing with these ultras. Like, that's probably like the best thing to me about ultras, is trying to fish. And so this guy gave me a great opportunity to work on some of my fishing skills with such a slow weapon. But it was also a bit of a wake-up call, because you'll see here a couple times we trade, and it's easy with an ultra to get in the mentality of, well, if we trade, I win, but there's always a bigger hammer, and in this case specifically, a great hammer. And so this guy's able to just completely tank my attacks. I think we'll see a couple R2s here that he's able to tank, which really surprised me. It surprised me at the time, but it should not have surprised me, and the guy just does hell amounts of damage with that thing. I had fun with these fights, so I do have to say I did enjoy using the ultra. I will never ever create a build around one, but I think I will start swapping to it more often. I should not have been using these charged R2s. He can just trade on reaction to those, which is very stupid for me. Alright guys, that about does it. So I had fun with this experiment. Probably will add ultras to my arsenal a bit more often. I'll hard swap in a few cases, but certainly don't expect it to become a regular part of my arsenal. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks and take care now.